So look, what I want to do, I realized that we left things hanging a little bit on the Shuma Hadar, because that's really a serious Asisa Yosher V'Atov halacha with all of the complications of it. So I thought it's worthwhile to open up the tour, Choshen Mishpat Kuf Gimel, and then we'll see a little bit of the Shulchan Aruch also, but a lot of the action is in the tour, Beis Yosef, in Kuf Gimel. And then I think we'll jump over to the real Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll go to a Gemara in Bava Metzia. All right, so let's find the tour. It's Kuf Gimel, and it's either Yud Chet or Tet, depending on what version you have. If you're working with the new tour, it's on page Shin. Okay, so it's tour Kuf Gimel, and it's either Yud Chet or Tet. Again, the first part goes through all of the conditions. There are a lot of conditions necessary for Beit Din to take away a piece of property and give it to the Malva when the Lova has no money, but that's all the first half of the Siman. And now we get to what happens afterwards. Okay, so it's either Yud Chet or Tet. Beit Din, Sheshamu Karka, Shalove, La Malve. Right, so they made an assessment with all of the conditions that preceded this. And they found the debt was $1,000. They found a piece of karka worth $1,000, and they gave it to the malve bechovo. The achar zman rotzahu, meaning the love, o yorshov, even the inheritors of the love, livdosa. They want to redeem it. The litain ma'osav, and they want to pay off the debt. So the debt was 1,000. They took away a property worth 1,000, and when the lova gets his 1,000, he wants to give the money to the malva and take his property back. Hadin imo, the lova wins. Afilu shoasa biyado kama shanim. All right, we're paskening that shuma hadar la'olam. But dafka b'mekarki, aval shomu lo metaltalin b'piron chovo ein tzarich lachziro. All right, so this is specifically karka. But again, remember, karka is the last resort. Normally, when a lova has no money, so the first thing you take is his metaltalin. All right, you'll take his, you'll take his second car. You don't take his first car because he needs a car. But if he has two cars, you take his car. But then that's metaltalin. That's irreversible. That's completely irreversible. Okay, now continues in the tour. Kosav, you know what? I'm sorry. I take it. Let's see the Beis Yosef first. We'll see the Beis Yosef, and then we'll go on, continue on in the tour. Okay. So, Beit Din Shishomu Karka. I'm in the tour, in the Beis Yosef. It's either Tet or Yud Chet. Beit Din Shishomu Karka Shalove. The Perek HaMafkid. This is the Gemara that we saw. Asikna Hilchas Shuma Hadra LaOlam Mishum Shene'emar V'Asisa HaYosher VaHatov. Because Vushama Tosfos Diliyorsho Nami Hadra, meaning the Lovis Yoresh could also insist on getting back the property. The Chen Das HaRambam, Perek Chav Beis Mimilva, because of Harosh. Hadi Amrin and Shuma Hadra, Dafka B'Mekarki, Aval B'Metaltali Lo. That wasn't mentioned in the Gemara, but the Rosh wrote it, and the Tur paskened like that. The Chen Kosav Nemuke Yosef, that it's only in Karka and not Metaltali. Okay, the Chen Kosav Balatrumos, the Chen Kosav Arava Magid. Okay, and everybody seems to agree. And Ad Kedei Kach, look what the Ramban wrote. Kol Daina de Lodoin ki hai gavna lav dainu. You lose your qualifications as a dayan if you don't paskin like this. Meaning, a dayan who would take away metaltalin and give it back to the love would lose his what word shall I use? His authority to be a dayan. Okay. Kosav Baal. Okay, let's go back now into the tour. So the tour now is going to be Yutet. Kosav Balatrumos, where we left off. Kosav Balatrumos. Malve shesotar ubana kirtsono bekarka. So remember, the Malva is holding it. He doesn't just sit there waiting for the Lova to come back with money. The Malva is using the land. He's using the land. Pinchas just tuned in. We're in a tour Kuf Gimel. Tour Choshen Mishpat Kuf Gimel. The Lefi Marit Ha'ayin lo hishbiach hakarka v'oso habinyan ela shu chafetz hayeliv noso kach. So he put something on the land, but he did not appreciate the land has not appreciated in value. Afal pishahu kimekalkel be'ene halove. And the Lova says, you ruined my land. I had no interest in doing what you did on that land. I was planning something else. And you built on it, and now you ruined my land. So now the Lova comes with money, and he wants to get rid of the Malva. And the Malva did something on the land that cost the Malva money, but the Lova is not very happy about it. The Lova has to pay the Malva for what there is, because there is value there. At the end of the day, the Lova now is getting back a land with something additional on it. Since objectively the land has not appreciated in value, because at the end of the day, there is a building there, but the land is not appreciated in value for some reason. Again, I'm not sure how this could happen, but this was the scenario, and therefore there's a machlokas whether the Malva can recoup his expenses or not. Okay, but let's just keep reading, and then we'll get back to the Beis Yosef. The Mishbiach, and this is where we got very right. This is where we got a little controversial. In Hishbiach hakarka me'elav, meaning capital appreciation. Could go nisyaker v'shava kiflayim. So kiven de shuma chozeret la'olam. Once I have a rule that says that shuma is chozeret with no time limit. Harei hamaos etzel haloveh. Adayin kimilve. So remember what happened here. The Lova borrowed $1,000 from the Malva. He didn't have money. So the Malva took away the property. But at the end of the day, the Lova is holding the Malva's money as a loan. The Yitol Malva also shvach dimimela. And now if you're going to make the Lova give $2,000, Havile kenotel schar hamtanas mos, the Havile karibis. So if you're going to make the Lova pay $2,000, since the loan was $1,000, what the Lova has is $1,000 of the Malva's money, if you make him give back $2,000 for the same property that you took away, then it's like the Malva, because he waited for a year or 2 years or 5 years, he's now getting more money, and therefore that's called hamtanas ma'osav. Okay, let's stop there. Okay. So we're going to have a lot. We had a lot to say about that when we learned it. Let's go. Other questions? If you have questions, stop me. Otherwise, we're going to go into Yutet in the Beis Yosef. So Kosav Balatrumas Malvashik Sotar Ubona Kirtsono. All right. The Gamarava Magid Kosav the Perikan Nizkar Shumash Chozeret Im Shina Hamalva Habinyan the Lohish Biach. So the Malva did something, but it's not worth any more because of his change. Yesh misha omer sheyesh lo lifroa demei binyano lefi shekach kasu b'shtar shuma. All right, this is really a question of what the minhag of the time was. Okay, interesting is look what he writes. Le'inyan halacha nira kiven desveikahu, whether the Lova has to pay for what the Malva did or not. Dainin be kula linitba. And if you see that little Yud Gimel there on the Hagos v'He'aros, that word, that the kula linitba is very ambiguous. Because who's the nitba here? Remember what happened. So the Malva took the property. He spent money on it. He did all kinds of things. Maybe he didn't spend money. He did something. The Lova is not interested in it. And there's a machlokas whether the Lova has to pay for the changes or not. And it says, since it's a suffix, machlokas, dainina lekula la nitba. Who's the nitba? Well, you could say the Malva is the nitba or the Nova is the nitba. Right? Because the Lova wants his property back without having to pay anything. But the Malva wants his expenses. So the Gos Maimonides notice the ambiguity here. And he says, Lo Pirish, at the very bottom of the page, if you have the new tour. Lo Pirish, mihu anitba, umihu atoveya. Ulefi anire, anitba hu amalve. Why is the nitba the malve? De karka zu omeres becheskaso. He's holding the land. And now he's being forced to give up the land that he put money into. And he wants his money. So kivan shebedinu b'shus yorad hamuchzar ku amalve. So since he went in legitimately, he's now holding the land. So he's the muchzar. Dechen kasav asma, alvareid b'sefer katzar kasav de'ein hamalve notel hotzaos, near the sphere leid halovu hamuchzar, dehu marikama v'hu tema. Because there is a machlokas. The Hagos certainly thinks that the malva should be called the muhzak, but there is those who say that the lov is the muhzak. Back into the Beis Yosef. This is the main thing we want to see. It's either ot chaf or chaf aleph, and that was hishbiach hakarka me'elav. So if there was capital appreciation, so the $1,000 land turned into $1,500, what happens? So what does it say? It says that the main halacha was kiva deshuma chozer leolam arei amos etzel alov adayin kemilve v'miuta lamalva also shvach dememela havi lekenotos schar hamtanas ma'osa v'havi lekeribis, and therefore what? And therefore what? So says the Beis Yosef. Ken kosav harav amagi beperak haniskar v'zel l'shono im hishbiach hakarka machmas hotzaah. No tel v'nishba kedin yorei birshus. Certainly, if the malva invested money and now the property is worth $1,500, he gets to recover however a yored shalo birshus, a yored birshus would get. Meaning a yored birshus always gets the higher of the investment or the appreciation. Meaning if the guy invested $2,000 and the property appreciated $3,000, the yored birshus gets $3,000. But if he spent more than the appreciation, he gets. I'm sorry, but if he spent less than if he spent less than the appreciation, he gets the appreciation. If he spent more than the appreciation, he gets his expenses. Okay, that is all if he invested money. All right, so that makes a lot of sense. All right, that the malva took away the property and he invested money in it, and now the property is worth more money. He should certainly get compensation for that. But what what happens if the property appreciated without the malva doing anything? The malva had no expenses. The amad mimena lematayim ein lo elamone. The malva only gets 100. Why? Shima taomer notel matayim nira kenotel schar ma'osav. So again, the capital appreciation the malva does not get. All right, v'chein ani omer shim huzlo. And kofin lachzira elim kenos in lo kishir chovo upashadhu. So obviously, if it depreciates, the malva certainly cannot benefit from the depreciation. Okay, but I meant the lova. The lova cannot benefit from the depreciation, and if the lova wants his karka back, he certainly has to pay the full 1,000. But the chiddush here is that if the lova wants the karka back and it appreciated, so he can get it back for the 1,000. Let's just see the Bedek Habayit, because again, everybody's wondering, that's not fair. I mean, the malva, why shouldn't the malva benefit from that appreciation? All right, so you're right, it looks like ribis, but we got to figure out a solution. Ubuhukra ein tam onachov be'enai. De'imi tam demexik enotel schar ma'osav he'echol choperos. If the malva is holding the property, and you say that if he pays more money for it, that it's ribis. Well, if he pays the same amount, the malva ate payros for 2 years, and we know in Hilchos Ribis that that you're not allowed to benefit from the fact that you're holding it. Ela al korchin mecher gomorhu. It's got to be a full sale. Otherwise, we would never allow the malva who's got the property to eat the fruit, where he might have to return it, and he keeps the fruit. And we don't make the lova pay for the fruit, compensate him for the fruit. We don't make the malva compensate the lova for the fruit that he ate. Meaning the status of this shuma is a pure sale. And therefore, how come it goes back at all? It's a asisa yasher v'hatov to say, you know what, Mr. Malva, what did you want? You wanted money. Here's money. But certainly, he, as long as he has the land, he can benefit from it. He can benefit from the land by eating payros. He can benefit from the land by appreciated value, because what happened was a sale. It was a sale. It's not a pikana. Ella, continue. I'm in the Bedek Habayis. Ella iise lahai dinam mitayma achrinu. But if you're going to insist that the love does not have to pay more than 1,000 because 2,000 would look like ribis, there's a different reason why that's true. The kiven de mishum vasisa yoshavat tovu. Dayo sheyitin lo kedei chovo, v'lo sheyitztarch livdoso yoser mikdei chovo, de'ein zeh tov lo. If you're going to come at it with a vasisa yosher v'hatov, so then you're forcing the malva to give up the property because he got back his loan. Okay, and therefore it doesn't have to be a mecher gomur, but it's a sisa yosher v'atov, and really you should be entitled to it. But a sisa yosher v'atov, we say you got to give it back. All right, so this is really an extreme. When you think about it, it's an extreme implementation of a sisa yosher v'atov. It's certainly much more extreme than the bar mitzvah case. But again, it does say in the Gemara explicitly that the reason that Shuma Hadar is only because of Asisa Yasher Vatov. Let's read one more seif in the tour. Aval shvach haba machmas hotza. I'm in Chaf Aleph. Aval shvach haba machmas hotza. No tel v'nishba. Can call your aid v'shus. Dadoni avi arozal kosav shimishbicha hamalve eno choseres klal. There's a different opinion. If the malve invested in the property, so really what we've got now is a different property. He invested in the property and he changed it. So it's not enough to say, okay, you get like a yored yored bishus. He doesn't want a yored bishus. He wants to keep the property. Even if the lova says, okay, what happened? You spend another $3,000? I'll give it to you. I'll give you the 1,000 plus 300 for the expenses. Says the Rosh, no. Once the Malva invested money and changed the value, he gets to keep it. All right, and if because of that, when it appreciated in value, the Lova has to pay the extra, and he's ready to pay the extra money. Okay, so then, I was like, if he's ready to pay the appreciated value, then even according to the Rosh, he would get it. Let's just see the Beis Yosef on that. Rabbeinu b'shem harosh be'amafki kosa. We didn't see this Rosh inside, which we probably should have, but we'll see it here now in the tour in the Beis Yosef. Dehade amrinan shuma hadra dafka b'shalo hishbiach hamalve o shalo nisyakru akarkaos. Two conditions, say the Rosh, for Shuma Hadar to be implemented. One, no appreciated value, and two, the Malva didn't invest any money and cause appreciation. Aval disyakra karkaos, appreciated value. O lo mistaber klal sheyitzapeh love kol yomav im yisyakra karkaos sheyivde karka. Look at it from the Malva's Lova perspective. The Lova gave him $1,000 worth of karka. And the Lova is sitting there waiting, and he'll see, you know what? If the land appreciates to 1,500, I'll walk in with my 1,000 and give it to him and take my 1,500. The Lova is going to play a waiting game. That's not fair. And why is that not fair? Well, we don't really care if it's not fair, but the result of that not fair is going to be nobody's going to loan money. People aren't going to loan money. I'm going to loan you money. You're not going to have money. I'm going to have to take your karka. And 2 years later, the karka is going to, I could have taken my money and I could have bought karka that appreciated in value. And therefore, it will cause a barrier to loaning money. And therefore, Chazal don't allow such a thing to happen. All right. Shalotinol delit b'fnei lovi. Okay. Says the Bedek Habayit. So again, the Rosh is a pretty big chiddush. The Ein Nira says the Bedek Habayit. Midivrei Aposkim. Shelo cholku b'kach. V'lisha de Gemara. De Omar Shuma Hadra. Achimashma, afilu nisyakra harbe hadra. Vein kanilas delet sharehu ochel peiros kolzman shitachas yada. So we're saying the Malva won't refrain from loaning money because what's his downside? His downside is he's going to take land that he could have bought, but he's got the land and he's going to benefit. Let's imagine an apartment. Okay, so you took an apartment worth $100,000, and you've got it for 2 years. During those 2 years, you rented it out and you got income. So therefore, that's part of the compensation that you got, and therefore it's not illegitimate that he should be able to take it back for the original loan price. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's basically what we need in here. Other questions? Before we're going to see it in the Shulchan Aruch, a couple of things, halacha l'maises. But basically, there is a machlokas rishonim. It turns out that there is a machlokas rishonim. What happens when there's either capital appreciation or the malve invested money in it? Okay, again, but you see that this is an extreme, in my opinion, this is a pretty extreme implementation of Asisa Yasher Vatov. Okay, let's just...
Rav Shai, are you going to get back to the good or all good question and how it relates to Asisa Yasher Vatov?
In my opinion, it doesn't. Rav Asher Weiss thinks it does, and I think it doesn't. B'Mesilas Kvodo, again, if I wouldn't have rayas that it doesn't, I would never dare to say such a thing. But I think that what Rav Asher Weiss said about Ugud o Ogud as being part of a takanas chachamim because of a sisa yasher v'hatov, that does not stand up when we learn pshat in the Gemara. We'll talk about it. You know what? When we get to Kofin al Midas Dom, we're going to get to Kofin al Midas Dom. I will send around. You know what? I'll go out on a limb. I'm going to send around Rav Asher Weiss's article on it, where he wants everything to be Vasisa Yasher V'Hatov. Ephraim's going to love it, but it doesn't stand up to all of the Gemaras in Pshat.
But Kofin al Midas Dom, isn't that sort of a mirror reflection of Sisas Yosher Esatayv?
When we get to Kofin al Midas Dom, you'll see that it's different. We're going to learn a couple of Gemaras that talk about Kofin al Midas Dom, and we'll see what the issues are. There are issues. Okay. Again, I promise you interesting. I promise you it will be interesting. Okay.
You promised me interesting 15, 20 years ago when I first met you.
Right. It was more than 20. I think it's more than 20 years. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
it's more than 20. Yeah.
Did I ever let you down?
No. You promised interesting and you've paid off ever since.
Okay. So we will have the interface. What's Kofin al Midas Dom? How is that different than Asisa Yasher V'Hatov? The fact that there are Gemaras that say the halacha is this way because Kofin al Midas Dom, and there are other Gemaras that say the halacha is this way because of Asisa Yasher V'Hatov, that itself should show you that there's a difference. And you will see when we study the details, you will see that there are different motivators and different conditions that could block. Remember, we saw in Bar Metzra that there are ways to block the Asisa Yasher V'Hatov. Blocking means that, well, it's very nice, it's Yasher V'Hatov for you, but it's the expense of somebody else. So that blocks. And the question is how much blockage and how that interfaces with Kofin al Midas Dom. So again, let's leave it for now. Right now we're still in the sugi of Asisa Yasher V'Hatov. So let's open up our Shulchan Aruch Kuf Gimel, and what we want is Siman Tes. Okay, Shulchan Aruch Kuf Gimel Siman Tes. All right, so let's start with Hey. Beis Din Sheshamu Karka Lebal Chov. Okay, Aval Shumas Metaltalin Lo Hadra, as we said. Bein b'nichsei lo ve'bein b'mishua bodim shebiyad halokeach, meaning that Ruvain owes Shimon money, and there was karka b'shubad, and Ruvain sold that karka to Levi. Well, remember, Shimon the malve can take away mishubadim, so he can go to Levi and take away the karka. So Levi, he took it away from Levi. He didn't even take it away from the love. Okay, still, okay. Ula'achar zman hisiga yaro shel love o shel nitraf o shel yorshehem ve'eviu lebal chovo ma'osav misalkin oso me'osa karka. All right, meaning this Asisa Yasher V'Hatov even goes as far as the lokeah. Afilu shosa biyada ba'al chov kama shani. The yesh omrim de lokeach lo yuchal l'sale kabal chov li'achar shegava es hakarka deshuma shegava es hakarka deshuma lo hadra ela lebailov kishegava mimenu b'nei chorin avalav lilokeach. In other words, there is such a thing as the malva can take away karka that the lova has. So if the malva takes away karka that the lova has, the malva has to give that property up. But if the malva doesn't take away karka from the lova, but he takes it away from the buyer of the karka, that already he can't do. That's already insulated, and we don't allow the buyer. We don't allow the love, all right, to give money to the buyer and take away the karka. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Right, the malva sold it. The malva took away karka, and then the malva sold it. Okay, so the lova can't go to the buyer and give money and take it back. Okay, Josh, you wanted to say something? Did I get the cheshbon wrong?
No, I think that's right. There's something bothering me about the way this is written. It seems to be ambiguous, although I think I'm misreading. Right? It seems, even though he says the lokeach can't be masalik, right? It says only the Bailov, but then it says only when he was Gova B'nei Chorin.
B'nei Chorin means that the Malveh takes away land that the Lova has in his possession.
Correct.
But if the Malveh takes away land that the Lova sold, which he's allowed to do, okay, because there's Mishubanim, if it was a Milva Bishtar, that's not subject to Shuma Hadar.
Right. But what I'm finding contradictory is the case of if the Malveh takes Mishubadim from a Lokeach, can the Love still activate Shuma Hadar? It seems to say
no.
yes, but then it seems to say no.
Where does it say yes? Where does it say yes?
Okay, because it only says Yesh Omer de Lokeach lo yukol asalech habalchov la'achar shegava esakar kodesh. Right, but it sounds like maybe the Bailim can. Right, at the end he says, right, he says aval lo Lokeach, like the Lokeach can't be gove. So, but it sounds like the Bailim could. If the Bailim sold land, if the Bailim, the Love, sold land to a Lokeach, and then the Malva came and was Gove from a Lokeach, and the Bailim said, hey, I have some money, I want to take the land back. Can he go to the Malva and take it back or not, based on this?
Say that again. I lost track of the cheshbon. Everybody help us here. Help us here. Go ahead.
Okay, again, you have a Malva and a Lova. Lova sells land. Now it's Mishubadim. Malva is Gove land from Lokeach.
So wait, in other words, if it would have the Lov is still owed the money, and in order to discharge the debt that the Lova had, the Malva is able to go to the Lokeach. But obviously, the Lokeach now has a claim on the Lova.
Right. Let's say the Lova gives the purchase price back to the Lokeach. Now the Lova comes into some money. He must have already come into money if he's giving the purchase price back to the Lokeach. Well, no, because he received it from the Lokeach. The land is taken away from the Lokeach, and then the money goes back to the Lokeach. It's just Lokeach's money returned.
Okay.
Lova makes new money, wants to redeem the field from the Malva. Can he, even though the field was taken from the Lokeach and not directly from the Lova, can the Lova activate Shuma Hadar? Right.
Since the Malva didn't take it from him, the Malva took it from the Lokeach.
Exactly. When I saw the language in the Machaber, it sounded like either one of them could activate Shuma Hadar, either the Lova or the Lokeach.
Okay, let's read it again. I hear what Josh is asking. Beis din sheshomu karka lebal chov, bein benichse love, bein b'mishubadim, meaning land that the Lova had already sold to a third part, to Levi. Uleachar zman hisiga yoro shel Love, o shel nitraf. Oh, remember. Very good. I understand now. Okay, so let's get Reuven, Shimon, and Levi in here. Okay, so we have Reuven. Reuven's the Malva. Right. He loans money to Levi, to Shimon. Okay, he loans money to Shimon, and Shimon has land. And if Shimon doesn't pay, the Malva takes away the land. But that didn't happen because before the debt became due, Shimon sold the land to Levi. So now Levi is sitting on Mishubadim. Comes along Reuven to Shimon and says, "Where's my money?" Ain't got it. Well, what happened to the land? I sold it to Levi. So Reuven goes to Levi and takes away the land. So now Reuven is sitting with the land that Shimon sold to Levi. Okay? Can Levi now come up with money and take it away from Reuven? That's the case.
Right. So
that's the nitraf. Yes, the nitraf. Levi wants the land. How do I know Levi wants the land? Because he bought it from Shimon.
He bought it.
He doesn't want it to be taken away from him. Okay? But he has no choice because Reuven is entitled to take it away. Really what we're saying is, can Levi pay off Shimon's debt to avoid Reuven taking it away? Or after he took it away to go with? That's the nitraf. O shel nitraf, o shel yoshehem. Anybody can come to the Malva. If the Malva gets money, he can be taken out of the picture. Because the Malva, that was the whole din of Asisa Yosher Vatov. The Malva's whole claim was money. And when he took land, he really took land in lieu of money. So therefore, if I give him money, he's out. I can send him home with money. And anybody who has the land, anybody who has a claim on the land, i.e. the Lokeach or the Yorshim, who would have gotten the land had Shimon still had it. Had Shimon had money, he would have paid the Ruvain, and the land, he would have sold the land, or it would have gone to his inheritors. So since they get money, they can take it away from the Malva. That's what it says here.
Okay, in that case, can Shimon get the land back? Let's say Shimon decides he changes his mind, he wants the land. Can he come up with money and activate Shuma Hadar?
I think for sure.
Even though he's two reasons. Number one, because he sold the land to Levi, so he was no longer directly involved in the land at the time that it was Nitraf.
Oh, he's very involved. You know why he's involved? Because the only reason Reuven is taking it away from Levi is because he's going through Shimon, and Shimon is going to have to make Levi good. Meaning, obviously, one of the scenarios would be that Levi came back to Shimon and said, "Hey, Shimon, they took away the land you sold me. Please give me back my money." And Shimon will have to do that. So now Shimon's back in the picture.
Okay. So I see that in the Mechaber. What would the Ramah say about that same question?
Where do you see? Well, let's read the Ramah. We didn't read the Ramah yet. Okay? So let's read the rest of the Mechaber and then we'll get to the Ramah. Again, so Beizin Shishomu Karka L'Balchov, Bein B'Nichsei Love, Bein B'Mishubadim Shebiyad Alokeach, meaning they took it away from Shimon or they took it away from Levi. Uliachar Zmani Siga Yerushal Love, Oshel Nitraf, Oshel Yorshim. Meaning either Levi got money and he wants to give Reuven money to get that land back that was taken away from him, or if there wasn't a Lokeach, but there were Yorshim of Shimon, meaning the land was taken away from Shimon, and now Shimon's Yorshim get money, both the Lokeach with money and Shimon's Yorshim with money. If it was taken away from the Lokeach or it was taken away from the Yorshim, from whoever it was taken away, if he has money, he can give money to the Malva and send him home. Ve'afilu balchovo ma'osav misalkin oso me'osa karka afilu shosa biyara balchov kamashana. That's the basic din. Says the Ramah. V'yesh omrim the lokeach lo yuchal l'salik habalchov ve'achar shegava es karka. Why? The shuma lo hadra. Here's the key. Shuma lo hadra ela lebailov shenigve mimenu minei chorin because of ve'asisa hayosher v'hatov avalo lokeach. In other words, the whole root is Asisa Yasher Vatov, that we're telling the Malva to do Tov to the Love. Okay? But the Malva doesn't have to do but the Lokeach, he has no demand of Asisa Yasher Vatov. Remember what's happening. The Lokeach is coming with money, and he wants the Malva to give up the property that he has. Obviously, the Malva doesn't want to. And if the Malva wanted, there would be no dispute. So let's think what just happened here. The Malva don't let money to Shimon. Okay, he now wants to collect the money and finds that Shimon has no money, and the land that he thought he's going to collect went to Levi. Okay, so the Malva comes and takes it away from Levi. So says the Ramah, what Vasisa Yosher Vahatov would there be to force Reuven to give the land back to Levi? Levi wasn't directly involved with Reuven. Since it's coming from Vasisa Yosh, that's the Machlokas Ramah and the Mechaber.
Question?
Yeah, go.
Well, why does the Ramah say the words B'nai Chorin, if that's the right reading? He should stop before he says B'nai Chorin.
Lokech lo yuchal habal chov le'achar shel gaval es hakarka. Why? Deshuma lo hadra ella lebailov kishagava mimenu B'nai Chorin.
Right, take away the words kishagava mimenu B'nai Chorin. Stop and say only the Balav can activate Shema Hadar. It sounds like
say here. Lo hadra ela lebailov kishanigva mimenu.
Right, or before kishanigva mimenu, only the Balav can activate Shema Hadar. Why? Since we're talking about
no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're demanding too much concise language here. I'm sorry. No. You can't be medaic like that. I'm very sorry. Can't be medaic like that. It's very clear what he's saying. Okay, he's saying that Shuma Hadar to the Shuma Hadar on the land that was taken away from the Love, and it's not Hadar on the land that was taken away from the Lokeach. How could land be taken away from the Malva to the Love? Because it's B'nai Chorin. How could it be taken away from the Lokeach? Because it's Mishubadim. I don't accept that. I don't accept that kind of a deal.
But can the Lova take back land that was taken as B'nai Chorim from a Lokeach?
What does that mean? I don't understand. What does that mean?
No, again, Shimon sells the land to Levi. Reuven takes the land from Levi.
Wait,
Shimon
wait, lad, go. Slow down.
Okay.
Reuven lent Shimon
What?
money.
Yes.
Now what happened? Next
Okay,
step.
now Shimon sells land to Levi.
Shimon sells the land that Reuven would have taken. He sells it to Levi. Everybody following the narrative here. Now what happens?
Now Reuven goes and takes the land from Levi.
Reuven now takes the land from Levi. Good.
Okay.
Now what?
Okay. So now Shimon.
You want to know whether Shimon can take the land back from Reuven?
Yes.
I think not.
Okay, that's
No.
what I was asking. Okay, because it's
No.
not B'nai Chorin.
Exactly. And there's no any what let's sharpen the discussion. Once Shimon sold the land to Levi, what a sisa hayasher v'hatov is there for Reuven to give the land back to Shimon? Shimon sold the land. When Reuven took away Shimon's land for money, and now Shimon has money, we could say, hey, Reuven, you really shouldn't have taken my land. You really wanted money. You shouldn't have taken my land. So I want my land, and here's money. But if Shimon sold it to Levi, he can't come to Reuven and say, I want land. You don't want land, you want money, because you sold it to Levi and got money. That's pashut. It's pashut. Okay? There's no. The minute he sells it to Levi, he's out of the picture vis-a-vis Reuven. The only question is whether Levi's in the picture vis-a-vis Reuven. And the Ramah says, no, he's not. Okay, it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's just see here if we want to see the Sma. All right, I mean, basically they're just going to show the machlokas between, they're going to just elaborate on the machlokas between them. So, okay, so that I think is, and let's read on. I'm sorry. V'im hamalve sotar ubon. I'm back into the machaber, because we have to talk about appreciation. What's the halacha with appreciation? V'im hamalve sotar ubon v'lo ishbiach hakarka b'kach. Eino notel hotza osa. He does it. In other words, if the malva spent money, but there was no appreciation because of what he spent, the lower takes the land back and says, have a good day. Okay? Pinchas, you have a question? No, okay. All right. But if that expense led to an appreciation of the value of the land, so then, nishbak v'notel kedin yored b'shus. Okay. The mishbiach me'elav. Here's the difficult one. The mishbiach me'elav kegon shenisyaker. Just appreciation, price appreciation. Eino nosen lo ela d'mechovo bilvad. V'yesh omrim dim hotzi aleha v'hishbicha lo hadra at all. That was the Rosh. Okay. Kichol lo hadra b'klal v'im nisyakra lo hadra ela kishas hayoker. So the Rosh holds that if there was investment appreciation, that terminates the ability to get your land back. And if it appreciated because of price, according to the Rosh, you got to give the higher price. Vim huzal lo hifsid hamalve vim rotzim lesalko tzorach latet lo kol d'mechovo. It's interesting that needs to be said, okay? Because we're saying that if you're going to give the lover the right to get the $1,000 property back for $1,200, then why can't the malva gets it? Why can't the malva? Why don't we say the malva should also benefit from the depreciation? And we say no. The malva has to give $1,000. Okay, the imrotzim l'salko tzorach latet lo kol d'mechovo, which makes perfect sense. Okay, the imkanu miyaro shelo l'salko shu beinam yocholim l'salik. If there was an agreement between them that in us they can always make it. The din of Shuma Hadar is a legislated asisa yasher batov. We should realize this. Shuma Hadar is not natural. Shuma Hadar is a legislated din by the rabbis because of asisa yasher batov. Just like bar metzra. Let's remember now. Let's remind ourselves of this asisa yasher batov. These are halachos that were legislated by the rabbis because of the asisa yasher batov, and therefore, any time the asisa yasher batov will not be so tov, then there's no legislation. Okay, so here we also say that because it's a legislated monetary law, in theory, the love and the malva can agree that this shuma is not going to go back. It's only because there's a legislated Asisa Yasher Batov, they can forego their rights. The Lova can forego their rights to buy back the property. Okay. Yeah. All right. I think that's all we need now. Yeah. Okay. I mean, basically that's it. That's the halacha lamaisa. That's how we paskin like the Rosh. I think most of the poskim hold like the Rosh. Okay. So in theory, either it doesn't go back at all or he's got to pay the higher price. Okay. I think the next thing we want to do is a Gemara Bava Metzia. Right? There's a long Gemara Bava Metzia on Memtes Amud Aleph, which again is going to get more into ethics. It's a lot of ethics besides halacha. So Bava Metzia Memtes Amud Aleph. It's a story that starts with a story. It's 3 lines before it gets wide. If you have Tzuras Adaf.
Kana?
Tana, it's Rav Kahana. 3 lines before it gets wide. Mem Tasamad Aleph Bava Metzia, Rav Kahana, Yavu Lezuzi Akitna. So the idea is that he had a ton of cotton, and the price of a ton of cotton was $10,000. Okay, and he got a down payment. He says, okay, I'm going to sell you a ton of cotton for $10,000, and he got $1,000. Okay, now before anybody made any kinyan, there was no kinyan made here. There was words. Rav Kahana agreed to sell a ton of cotton for $10,000. The buyer gave him $1,000. And then what happened? Before the buyer came to pay the rest of the money and make a kinyan, the cotton appreciated to $12,000. Now, what does the buyer want? What does the buyer want?
Same price.
$10,000.
He wants to give $9,000 and get the cotton. What does Rav Kahana want?
The increased price.
Or maybe call off the deal because there was no kinyan. So says the din.
But there was a kinyan on the $1,000.
There was no kinyan. Money is not a kinyan. Well, remember, in Din Torah, money is not a kinyan. You need Mashiach. Remember? Midoraita, according to some opinions, money is a kinyan, but halacha lamaisa, the Rabbanon were mafkia the kinyan of mammon, and it's only Mashiach. Okay, but they made a verbal deal. What's the status of a verbal deal? Okay? So Rav Kahana Yavole Zuzah Kitna, Lesof Iker Kitna, also Lakami Derav. What's the din? Amar Le, B'maydin Akita Zuzi. What, you got 10% of the purchase price? He gave you $1,000 towards the $10,000 of the cotton? Hav Luhu. You got to give him 10% of the cotton. The idach, what about the rest? You agreed to sell him the other 90% for $9,000. Dvarim ninu, it's words. Vidvarim ein behem mishum mechusrei amana. So there's a concept called mechusrei amana. That's a status where you get a reputation now of being an unreliable person. Okay? So the question is whether saying that I'm going to sell you for $10,000 and the price went up and therefore I don't want to sell it for the original price, does that generate mechasrei amana? And it says no. Why not? Anybody have an idea why not?
Because even though I think it would be wrong, but most people would take that view.
That what?
That if the price goes up before you close, you have to pay the higher price.
You have a right to cancel the deal. And you're not called mechasrei amana. Mechasrei amana is a status. Meaning, if you make a deal and you change it for no reason, this is what we're going to see. Yeah, you know what? I changed my mind. Okay? Or I found another buyer. That also may make you a mechasrei amana. Let's see. That's what that's what the Gemara is going to talk about. Okay? Okay. The itmar, here's the din. Dvarim. Dvarim means words. The guy said words. I'm going to sell you the house. I'm going to sell you my car for $20,000. Rav Amar ein behem mishum mechusrei amana. Rabbi Yochanan Amar yesh behem mechusrei amana. If you said it words, There's no mechusri amana from words. Machlokes. So what do we see that? What do we see that Rav is saying? Rav's opinion. Remember, who did Rav Kahana go to? Asal kami de Rav. Amar le b'maydik nikas zuze havlulu. Idach dvarim ninu v'dvarim ein bahem mishum mechusri amana. De'itmar dvarim Rav Amar ein bahem mechusri amana. So Rav is of the opinion that words do not generate mechusri amana. Rabbi Yochanan argues. Rabbi Yochanan holds that it does. Okay. So says the Gemara, Meisvei. Let's see who we're going to ask a kasha on. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer. This is already Tanaim. Ma Talmud Lomar Pasuk Hin Tzedek V'Halo Hin Bichlal Eifa. Remember what the pasuk says: Hin Tzedek, Eifa Tzedek. It means many different measures. And says the Gemara, well, once you told me that my measure has to be honest, it's like saying your liters have to be honest and your kilograms have to be honest, right? And your cubic and your metric measures have to be honest. Isn't that redundant? That's redundant. We're telling you your measures have to be honest. So why did it have to say after you told me a tzedek that your measure of flour has to be honest? Oh, my measure of flour, that has to be honest, but my measure of liquid, I'm allowed to cheat you. Says that that's redundant. Right? Hin tzedek, halo hin bichlal eifa. Haya. Elalomer lacha, sheyehe hein shelcha tzedek. V'lav shelcha tzedek. When it says hin tzedek, we're not talking about measurements, we're making a drasha. Hin is the same letters as hein, which means yes. What it's saying is your yes has to be b'tzedek and your no has to be b'tzedek. I.e., what does that sound like?
He said to
what does that sound like in relation to our sugya?
Kasha on Rav.
Yes, to do what he agreed to.
You have to, right? You said dvarim. You got to do what you said.
Right.
Okay, so that's a kasha on. It's a kasha on Rav. Amar Abaya hahu shelo yedaber echad bepev echad belev. Different drasha. It's not talking about when you said yes, you have to actually do it. It means you're not allowed to say one thing and think another thing. In other words, what does it mean if you said it? If I said I'm going to sell it to you and I had no intention of selling it to you, that's echad bepev echad belev. But if when I said I'm going to sell it to you, I intended to sell it to you, but something changed, so my words that I said I'm going to sell it to you are not binding. That's what Rav holds. It's not binding. That as the hin tzedek is only saying, don't intentionally lie, but I can change my mind. It doesn't stop me from changing my mind. That's what Rav is going to hold. How Rav is going to learn that pasuk.
What
Okay.
is he? I mean, isn't that pshit also? It says lo shaklu. Like, why do I need like another pasuk to tell me this? I know I'm not allowed to l'shakir. That's true for all life situations.
No, you're asking. Let me sharpen your question. You're saying, why is echad bepev echad belev any different than a lie, than sheker? Why isn't that applied midvar sheker tirchak? I hear the question. Look at Rashi. There's a couple of Rashis. Okay. Okay. Let's take the second narrow line. Hin bichlal eifa. Shahin yud beis lugin ve'efa shlosha sa'in shein ayin beis lug. Meaning the hin and the efa are just different measurements. Okay, all right. It's right. Ella sheyehei hein shelcha kolomar kishatam medaber hein olav kayem dvarecha v'hatzdekota. You got to do what you said. Okay, but what does Abaye say? No, it means shelo yedaber echad bepev echad belev. Bishashu omer hadibur. Lo yehe bedaito lishanos, aval im nishtane hashar liachar zman, v'hu chozer bo lefi shinui hashar, ein kan chisaron amona. Asks Daniel. So, okay. I think from Rashi I'm going to medayek something.
Yeah, I think Rashi's different.
Yeah. The person lies. Okay, so he violated midvar sheker tirchak. Okay, am I allowed to impose upon him a reputation of mechasrei amana. Mechasrei amana is a status in halacha about how people deal with you. So it says here that yes, that echad b'peh echad b'leiv, not only are you lying, but you have accrued the status of a mechasrei amana. That's what I think. That's how I think we have to learn pshat. We could go maybe between. It's almost the end, so I'll try to look at a couple of other Rishonim because I think your question is an excellent question, and I'm sure the Rishonim are going to talk about it. Okay, let's just go. Let's read a little bit further on, just so we see what the flow of the Gemara is. There's still a lot more to see, which we'll have to see next time. But I'm going to try to research Daniel's question. Okay. Right. Okay, so we have basically now. So we still have a machlokas Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, and the machlokas is standing. Rav holds that dvarim is not mishum mechasrei amana, and he interprets the pasuk of hin, meaning echad b'peh echad b'leiv, and Rabbi Yochanan interprets the pasuk that you become a mechasrei amana if you don't have a hin shel chatzedek. Next, meisvei Rabbi Shimon omer afal pisha amru talis kona dinner v'zahav and dinner zahav kona talis, meaning here's the idea of a kinyan. Money is not kona, but chalipin is. So what's the difference between money and chalipin? Money means that I gave you $100 for I gave you $1,000 for the computer. That's money. It's not kona. What happens if I gave you a stereo for the computer? That's chalipin. Okay. So now we had gold and we had silver. And what's the money and what's the product? Okay, they're not both considered money. One is product and one is money. So if I give you product, then the kinyan is chal. If I give you money, the kinyan is not chal. So therefore, afal pisha amru talis kone dinner zahav, meaning the talis is product, the dinner zahav is product. That's chalipin. The ain dinner zahav kone talis. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. If I give you, if you make a kinyan on the talis that we agreed that you're gonna buy the talis for $100, and I have $100 sitting on my desk, okay, and you made a kinyan in the and I made a kinyan on the talis, you own that $100 because the kinyan makes me liable for the money. That's what it means. The talis kona dinner, but ain't dinner zav kona talis. But if you give money, you don't get the talis because the dinner is money, and you made a mashicha on the money. You don't get there's no chalip in there. But if you made a mashicha on the product, then you own the money because the mashicha is a kinyan. Mikol makom. So again, if the guy made a mashicha on the money, he doesn't own the talis. If he made a mashicha on the talis, he owns the money. Okay, because Mashicha is Kona, the talis, and Memela, you own the money. But Mashicha on money, that's money. Money is never Kona, the talis.
Where do we see the mechanism of this? Like,
of what?
It's not necessarily logical that Mashiach on the money doesn't work, but Mashiach on the metaltalon does work.
Okay,
I would have said punt verkeerd.
Okay.
I would have said punt verkeerd. So where do we get this from?
Yes. Okay. You say punkt verkeerd because you still think, right, is that paying money, that should seal the deal. I paid money, that seals the deal.
Yeah.
But that's not correct. That's not correct. The only thing that seals...
Where does this come from?
That's the idea. Kesser is not Kona because Chachamim uprooted the ability of money to make a kinyan. Mashiach is in the Torah. Mashiach makes a kinyan, that's in the Torah. Okay, and according to machlokas whether in the Torah kesef is kona, but even if you hold kesef is kona midoraisa, the chachamim invalidated the ability for money to be kona. So lamaisa halacha lamaisa, whether it's doraisa or dorabanan, when I give you money, I have not yet been kona. However, let's read on. Just 1 second. Let me just read the rest, so at least you won't be so upset. Afal pisha amru talis kona dinner ve'ein zav ve'ein dinner zav kona talis, meaning giving money doesn't make a kinyan. Mikol makom kachalacha, that's the din. Aval amru mishapara me anshe dor hamabul ume anshe dor hapalaga hu atid li para mimi sheino omed bidiburo. You've heard the phrase mishapara? You've heard me that. Mishapara is a curse. Okay, it's a bad thing. So if you were moshech the money, technically there's no kinyan, and technically you can return the money and undo the deal. But if you do that, you get what's called a mishapara. Okay, so it's not neutral. It's not an innocent thing to give the money and then decide you're not doing it and taking it back. Technically, you're allowed to, but it's a mishapara. It's a very bad thing. Okay, so
I think, Rabbi.
Yeah, now go ahead.
I think the factor that Ephraim's missing is that the reason why Chazal or Mavatel with regarding metaltalin is that if transactions will be completed either by transferring money, then that also means that the achrayus for the merchandise would transfer. So therefore, the merchandise is still by the buyer, and somebody comes and steals it, or it gets burned in a fire, and he can say, "Look, you already gave you the money; you own it. It's not my problem."
Again, what Pinchas just did is he gave you the reason for din. Why did the Chacham? I'll elaborate on it. Okay, I'll elaborate a little. So the Chacham said technically, you have wheat in your storehouse, okay, and mitzad din, if I gave you money, I own the wheat. So now you got my money, and my wheat is in your storehouse, okay, and then a fire breaks out. You're gonna call you. It's not my business. It's not your problem anymore. It's not your problem because I own the wheat. Okay? And therefore, the Chachamim did not want the kinyan to be finalized unless I actually made Mashicha on it. Okay? Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear it, but
in other words, you're right. No, you're right. Money should seal the deal. By the way, in real estate, money seals the deal. Money is a kinyan in karka. It's only not a kinyan in metaltalin. Okay, so that's why it said, but here's the point, and we'll leave it at that and pick this up. We'll pick this up on Sunday, is that there's still consequences for your verbal commitment. Because if I made a when I made a mashiach on the money, I certainly made a commitment. But since it's not a kinyan, the only thing left is my word. Okay, and therefore there's a mishapara. So we'll have to see who has a problem with that and how we get out of it. Okay, Beseder. So we'll leave it at that for now. And I will see everybody B'ezrat Hashem. Sunday we'll finish this mem test. I think we're going to see some of the Rishonim on it because this is a very important part of the sugya. And I'll try to research Daniel's question.
Sounds like
good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. What did Neil?
The Mishapara aspect. It sounds like it's a Vasise Asher Yatov. That's why it's a Mishapara. That's what it sounds like.
Not quite. No, it's not. No, it's much stronger than Asisa Yasher Vato. It has to do with honesty. It's much stronger than Asisa Yasher Vato.
Okay. No, but like it comes from there, Kiviyachol.
I would, if there would not be a pasuk Vasisa Yasher Vato in the Torah, I still would say that Mishapara is a legitimate consequence. Because as you said, you're lying. You're not living up to your commitment. You're not living up to your commitment. That's the point. We'll pick this up on Sunday. B'ezrat Hashem. Everybody have a good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.